All right, welcome everyone to the deep dive. Today we're going behind the scenes a bit, looking at the video game industry.
Yeah.
And, specifically kind of the not so glamorous side of how these games that we love so much get made.
Right.
So we've got a really interesting podcast script as our source material today.
For sure.
And this script really goes deep into the issues of crunch, burnout, and union busting in the game development world.
Yeah, some heavy stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Our mission today is to unpack these ideas, figure out why they're happening, what they do to the people who make these games, and what might be changing, if anything.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, you know? We spend hours escaping into these incredible games, but the process of making them can be brutal.
Yeah, and this script really shines a light on that contrast.
It does.
So let's jump right in with this term we hear a lot, crunch.
Yeah.
Now, I think most people kind of understand it's about working long hours, but our source material dives a little deeper, right?
Absolutely. According to this script, crunch refers to these periods of really intense work, often lasting weeks or even months, where developers are putting in like 80-hour weeks to meet deadlines. It's not just a few late nights here and there. It's this constant pressure cooker environment.
The source makes a comparison to finals week in college.
Oh, yeah.
But like finals week every week.
Oh.
And to give an idea of how intense this can get, the script brings up the development of Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh, yeah. Huge game.
Massive.
Huge expectation.
Absolutely. And the stories from that development cycle are pretty intense.
Yeah, there were reports of developers working nights, weekends, basically living at the office.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it really blurs the line between work and life.
Totally. And it makes you wonder, why is this happening?
Right.
What's pushing these studios to push their team so hard?
Well, the source points to a couple of key factors. One seems to be unrealistic deadlines.
Okay.
Maybe coming from a need to please shareholders. Keep those financial expectations in check.
Right. And so the teams feel this immense pressure to deliver, even if it means these insane crunch periods.
Exactly.
It's a tough situation all around, but we can't forget the human cost, right?
No, absolutely not. And the source actually includes this really powerful example, a tweet from a developer who said they hadn't seen sunlight in 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And was desperate for help and coffee.
That's rough.
Yeah, a very real glimpse into what this kind of pressure can do to a person.
It really paints a bleak picture.
Yeah.
And the source even calls it a zombie apocalypse, but with more coding.
Ooh, that's a dark analogy.
It is, but it sticks with you.
Yeah, it definitely captures that feeling of being totally consumed by work.
Right, like you're cut off from the world.
Exactly. And that level of immersion in work, it takes a toll.
Absolutely. And it feels like this kind of intense crunch would almost inevitably lead to burnout, right?
That's exactly the connection the source makes. It basically says that burnout is a direct consequence of this constant pressure. Like that initial excitement you have for making games, that passion, it gets eroded by the constant overwork and exhaustion.
You go from loving your job to feeling trapped by it.
Right. It becomes an obligation, a burden, instead of something you enjoy.
The source has this great analogy.
Yeah.
Imagine you love playing Minecraft.
Right. Okay, yeah.
You love building castles. It's fun and creative.
Yeah.
Now imagine you're forced to build castles nonstop under an impossible deadline.
Oh, yeah, I see where you're going.
Suddenly it's not fun anymore.
No, not at all.
It's just this soul-crushing grind.
And the source really drives home how widespread this is, right?
Yeah, it mentions a statistic that's really concerning. 60% of game developers experience burnout.
60%?
60%. And to put that in perspective, they compare it to the difficulty of a Dark Souls boss run.
So basically insanely hard.
Yeah, and they're saying burnout is even more common than that.
Wow.
So clearly this is a major problem in the industry.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I guess studios have to be aware of this, right?
Well, the source does mention some of the things companies try to do to address it.
Okay, what, like foosball tables and free pizza?
Sometimes. I mentioned free snacks, yoga classes, stuff like that.
Right.
But the script is pretty critical of these efforts.
Yeah, I can see why.
They call it putting a Band-Aid on a broken controller.
Ooh, I like that.
It's a nice gesture,
Yeah.
but it doesn't fix the underlying problem.
Right, it's not addressing the core issue of overwork.
Exactly. Now, the source material also gets into this other really tricky topic, union busting.
Yeah, that's a big one.
For those who might not be familiar, what does it mean for game developers to try to unionize?
So the source actually has this really cool analogy. They say forming a union is like creating a guild IRL.
like in an RPG.
Exactly. It's about coming together as a group to fight for better working conditions, fairer pay, more reasonable hours.
Okay.
It's about having a collective voice to negotiate with the companies. And the script doesn't shy away from talking about times when these efforts have been met with, well, resistance.
Right.
For example, they talk about Activision Blizzard,
Oh, yeah.
where it's alleged that the company was actually spying on employees who were trying to unionize.
Whoa, seriously?
Yeah, they call it Metal Gear Solid level sneaky.
That's pretty intense.
It is, and it kind of shows how adversarial things can get.
Right. It's not always a smooth process.
Not at all.
And the source mentions a specific consequence that happened at Raven Software.
Oh, yeah.
After the quality assurance testers there tried to unionize,
What happened?
well, there were layoffs in that department.
Oh, that's not cool.
Yeah, the script just says not cool. But it really highlights the risks that can come with trying to organize.
Definitely. It shows the power dynamics at play.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's not all doom and gloom on the union front.
No.
The source also mentions some positive developments, like developers at Keyword Studios and CD Projekt Red.
Okay.
They're also in the process of unionizing.
So there's momentum building.
Yeah, it seems like there's a growing movement within the industry toward collective bargaining.
That's really encouraging.
The source calls it unlocking the solidarity achievement.
I love that.
It's like a sign of progress.
For sure.
So we've got these big challenges, the crunch, the burnout, the difficulties with unionizing.
Yeah.
What solutions does our source material offer?
Well, there are some glimmers of hope. They talk about studios like Insomniac Games.
Okay.
They've reportedly been very successful at avoiding crunch altogether.
So it's possible to make great games without those insane work hours.
Seems like it.
They also mention the Hades developers, who really prioritized mental health during their process.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it shows that there are studios out there who are trying to do things differently.
And it's not just on the studios, right?
The source also talks about the role of consumers, us, the players.
Okay.
They suggest that we can actively choose to support studios that are known for ethical practices.
So like voting with our wallets?
Exactly. By supporting the good guys, we can hopefully incentivize better treatment across the industry.
I like that idea.
And for the developers themselves, the source has some direct advice.
Let's hear it.
First, talk to your colleagues. Share your experiences.
Okay.
Second, document any unfair or unsustainable practices.
Makes sense.
And finally, seriously, consider unionization as a way to fight for change.
Right. Collective action.
Exactly. And they even say unionize like Link collects rupees.
Ah, I love it.
So, wrapping things up, this podcast script has really given us a glimpse behind the curtain of the game industry.
For sure.
We've seen the intense pressure of crunch, the toll it takes in the form of burnout, and the struggles around unionization.
Yeah, and it's clear that these aren't just isolated incidents.
Right, there's systemic issues.
Affecting a lot of people.
Absolutely. But there are also signs of hope.
Yeah.
Studios trying new approaches, a growing movement toward unionization, and the power of consumer choice.
It's a complex picture.
It is. And it leaves us with a final thought to consider. We love these games. They bring us so much joy.
Yeah, they really do.
But what does it say about us if the creation of those games relies on practices that are unsustainable for the people making them?
That's a good question.
What responsibility do we have as players to push for a healthier, more ethical industry? It's something to think about the next time you boot up your favorite game.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.